Okay, let's kick off. So good afternoon and welcome. I'm Carl Astbury. I'm from the Resilient Cities Network, and it is a real pleasure to introduce today's Cities on the Frontline session. Since launching the series with the World Bank's City Resilience Programme in 2020, we've been privileged to hear from inspiring voices across regions, sectors and backgrounds. And today, with the support of the Z Zurich Foundation, we're bringing the conversation squarely to community resilience. So I'm going to briefly introduce our wonderful panel and speakers for today. We have Sulafa Abushal, who is the Interim Strategic Policy Lead for Whole of Society Resilience, who works for the Greater Manchester Combined Authority in the UK. We have Pauline Johnston, who is the People and Place Activation Consultant at Civic and Social, based in Greater Manchester, the UK. We have Mazrina Khalid, who is the Managing Partner for Urban Scale Malaysia and President of the Malaysia Institute of Planning. And last, but certainly not least, we have Zuhaila Zubel, who is the Chief Resilience Officer and Director for Town Planning in the city of Melaka in Malaysia. I'm going to hear from each of them shortly. I'll be trying to keep us on time and we'll bring your questions into the discussion at the end. So first of all, everyone's favourite bit of a webinar, a little bit of housekeeping. We hope to have an open and candid conversation where you can interact with our panelists. We've got 430 participants registered today. So to keep things flowing, please use the Q&A function on Zoom to share your questions and we'll relay them to the speakers during the Q&A at the end. A quick reminder that the session is being recorded and you'll be able to find the video and all materials on our website afterwards. So let's kick off. Why does this matter? So let's start with the why. We all know on this call that the climate crisis is no longer an abstract future. It's the daily operating context for our cities. Heat waves are getting hotter, floods more frequent, and disruptions, whether that's to energy, water, transport, or impacts on health, are colliding with cost of living pressures. And these shocks don't land on a blank canvas. They land on existing inequalities. That's why this work must centre the people and places who face the highest risks and fewest buffers, what we'll call populations that are facing vulnerabilities. So what do we mean by community resilience? Yeah, at its heart, it's the capacity of neighbours, local groups, faith organisations, residents associations, youth clubs, small businesses to anticipate, cope, adapt and thrive before, during and after disruptions. And it's very practical. It's about trusted messengers checking on older residents during extreme heat. It's a school or community centre acting as a cooling and support hub. It's local volunteers trained to manage rain gardens or sustainable urban drainage. It's shared information that helps families take low or no cost actions to be better prepared. And these are not side projects, are they? These are core city resilience functions that reduce risk, protect health, and keep essential services working when it counts. And let's all think back to COVID-19. Communities were the first responders. They rallied, supported neighbours, kept spirits up, and provided essential services. In every climate emergency, you see exactly the same pattern. Communities respond and lead recovery. And our job is to enable that capability ahead of time and to support communities, not just in response, but in adaptation, building local skills so measures are locally relevant and actually work, whether that's through nature-based solutions, early warnings, or adaptations to housing. Communities can deliver. And here's the real key insight, I think. Cities can't do resilience to communities. They have to do it with communities. And that requires enabling conditions. And from our work across regions, a few stand out to me. Recognising social infrastructure as critical infrastructure. those places and networks that build trust, like community centres, libraries, youth clubs, faith spaces, they're lifelines in a crisis. It's about sharing power and resources early, bring residents and community organisations into agenda setting, not just consultation. About providing that backbone funding, and that will beat those one-off pilots. So multi-year support for coordination, small grants and maintenance turns those good ideas into lasting capability. Making data local and human, pairing those official data sets and climate models with street level evidence, whether that's heat sensors, citizen reporting, community mapping. When residents can see the problem, they can shape the solution. It's about designing for co-benefits. The best actions build climate and social resilience together. So unblocking some of those, unblocking the plumbing, so to speak, updating procurement for small grants and community-led delivery, and reducing that time from idea to action, and measuring what matters. So, it's not only about tracking emissions or assets, it's also about tracking trust, participation, and access, because resilience is as much social as it is physical. So today's session is going to bring some of those ideas to life. In Melaka, Malaysia, partners have co-developed community action plans and deployed simple tools to make heat and flood risk visible at the neighbourhood scale. And in Greater Manchester in the UK, the city region is working across scales to pilot projects that build community resilience, such as a resilience hub in Edgeley, which are being plugged directly into the development of citywide strategies and frameworks. So our aim, as always, is to demonstrate real practical actions that have impact and build resilience. And by the end, you should have a clearer view of how to enable community resilience in your own context, due to bring in ideas on how to fund and govern it, and how to connect neighbourhood action to citywide policy. So with that, let's get started, and let's open in Greater Manchester with the city perspective on whole of society resilience. So Sulafa, how has the city region of Greater Manchester approached working with communities?
Hi, Carl. Thank you. Thanks, everyone, for having me. I'm going to try and answer that question through a presentation and talk you through a little bit about the work that we do in Greater Manchester, although you've covered it already, Carl, to be honest. I don't need to do anything. That was a great introduction and great scene setting. I'm just going to try and share my screen with you. Okay, thanks everyone. Yeah, as Carl mentioned, I'm Sulafa Abushal. I work for the Greater Manchester Combined Authority. I'm the interim strategic policy lead for whole of society resilience, which sounds quite a grand title, to be honest. To be responsible for whole of society resilience is quite a big ask. But I'm going to talk through a little bit our approach in Greater Manchester and some of the steps we take around community action in resilience. First of all, though, I wanted to just give you a little bit of context around Greater Manchester and where we are. So I would just want to give you a bit of a sense of our area. So we're a city region in the northwest of England. We have around 3 million people in our city region across 10 local government districts. Our population is really diverse, with communities from a huge range of backgrounds, and we have so many cultures contributing to the region's character and strength. We've also got a wide range of risks that reflect our urban environment, social inequalities, and exposure to climate-related events, as Carl's already mentioned, but flooding, heat waves, as well as other challenges like economic pressures and public health emergencies. Greater Manchester is governed by the Combined Authority, so that's who I work for. The Combined Authority bring together leaders from those 10 districts to set those shared priorities and coordinate action across the area. And when it comes to resilience, we work through a multi-agency partnership, and that partnership includes local authorities, emergency services, health organisations, and a really key partner in this space is our voluntary and community groups, who are a key player. So that partnership helps us prepare for and respond to and recover from emergencies and disruptions that we see, making sure that our communities are protected and supported. And our approach to resilience is really shaped by a set of integrated frameworks and strategies that straddle kind of our city region. And together they focus on tackling inequality, supporting well-being, and helping those communities adapt to challenges such as the climate events, pandemics, economic pressures. And they really emphasize on working together and drawing on local strengths. And we want to make sure that approach is reflected in our resilience activities as well. Okay, so like cities everywhere, we're dealing with more frequent and severe climate challenges. We have events like heat waves and flooding are becoming more common. I'm sure that'll be reflective across many of the partners on the call. But we also know from experience that their impact isn't felt equally across our communities. And so having a broad brush approach to community resilience isn't going to fit, and it risks leaving people and particular communities behind. And we know that from other disasters, emergencies that we've seen over the last 10, 20 years, that impact, that disproportional impact in our particular communities. So the ability of our communities to cope really depends on factors like housing, income, health, access to green spaces and support networks, that sort of social infrastructure that was mentioned earlier. Some of our communities face several risks at once, so poor housing, limited services, fewer social connections, which can really make emergencies much harder to manage when they do happen. So when crisis hits, if you're already exposed to some of those existing risks and impacts on your life, then when something does happen, that ability to be resilient and manage it is much harder. So that's why we really feel that the most at risk must help shape our solutions to community resilience activities. So we aim to embed community learning and local knowledge into our approach, absolutely recognising that co-production with residents leads to outcomes that we think are effective and sustainable, which is really key in this space. We do know that project work, short-term funding is an issue, so we want to be able to make sure that our initiatives are embedded in our work. We try and do that by bringing together a wide range of stakeholders, again, some of those ones that I mentioned earlier, voluntary groups, faith groups, community groups, local leaders, public services, and talk about how we can empower communities to lead and ensure that where we can, resilience is everyone's business, everyone's interested and feels that it's relevant to them. That being said, strong relationships, building trust takes a really long time and collaboration and obviously resource and effort. People are dealing with lots of things in their everyday life, and this feels like an add-on sometimes, but it's absolutely essential to make sure we've got that strong community engagement, because without that, it's really difficult to hear what matters to communities, what's missing, what we need to change, and where we need to kind of focus our work. So we try and make sure that we're doing that, and that is reflected in our practice. So I think that everything that I've said will be obvious to most partners on the call. And if you're anything like me, you want to know how we actually do that, what the tangible things that we do to put some of those principles into action. And I absolutely know that hearing and learning from other cities has shaped our thinking and practice in Greater Manchester. So I wanted to share some brief examples of how we put some of these principles into action through some of our community resilience initiatives. And then I'll hand over to Pauline, who will do a bit of a deep dive on one of our flagship projects. So a few things I just wanted to mention are specific community resilience projects that we've delivered in Greater Manchester or in the process of delivering. So we've had a project called Project Heatwave, which was a project that tackled the challenge of communicating heat risk to older people in our city region. And for any of you that are visitors in Manchester will know that sunny days are rare. And so it's quite difficult to actually bring home the risks associated with heat when people actually just want to enjoy that sunshine. So that project, we brought together a group of trusted partners. We spoke to over 100 older people and over 30 organisations that support older adults in our city region to understand how we can improve the way we talk about heat, leading to the co-production of a practical toolkit aimed at partners working with older adults. And we've looked at the rollout of that, some training associated with it, and building awareness around risk and how we communicate heat, which has been a really positive, and it's an ongoing project that we're continuing to develop. We've also got some different projects where we're looking at community resilience conversations in 2 of our areas in Greater Manchester. We're inviting local residents to help shape their own local resilience action plans based on their priorities and what's important to them, but also their experiences, what's happened to them that's shaped how they respond to challenges in their particular area. And in that project, we're trying to listen about how we can bring conversations and action around community resilience into different spaces. It is difficult to bring those conversations to people that haven't experienced flood or heat wave or any other kind of emergency. It doesn't feel relevant, it doesn't feel real. So we're trying to kind of understand how we do that in a different way. We've got another project that we're working on, which has just started, but that aims to explore the role of young people of faith in particular, looking at their role in resilience and cohesion activities. So for that project, we're working in partnership with local authorities, faith communities, places of education, looking at co-designing approaches to resilience and cohesion. The core bit of that, which is really great and built into kind of the project funding, is that we're starting with a year of community engagement and in listening exercises, so we can build that trust, we can build those relationships, and hopefully go on to produce something that's a really usable tool, both for those communities, those young people of faith, but also for local authorities, and support that kind of interfaith collaboration and build those long-term partnerships. I also just wanted to touch on a project that we're doing called Resilient Stars, which looks at helping school-aged children and staff build confidence and preparedness for emergencies and look at wider resilience. So how do they take that home? What conversations can they have with families and their communities? And looks at strengthening learning and links between schools and communities. So they're just a few that I wanted to touch on briefly to kind of say how practically we're bringing some of those principles around co-production and community engagement into our work. So hopefully that's showed a little bit, although very quickly and very high level, about how we put those principles into practice, working with communities, co-producing solutions, and really making sure that lived experience shapes every step that we're working on. Building on that work, we've got a project which I mentioned, which is our flagship programme for resilience for communities, which Pauline will do a little bit of a deep dive on, so I'll just give an overview. But Resilience for Communities is delivered in partnership with the Resilient Cities Network, funded by the Z Zurich Foundation. R4C, as it's called, focuses on 2 particular communities in Greater Manchester, one in one of our boroughs called Wigan, and another area in Stockport. Both those areas face climate risks such as flooding and heat wave. We work with local partners to build that shared space for connection, support, resilience, and I think, as Pauline will, I'm sure, talk about, we talk about how you bring fun into that, how do you build fun into that conversation. The programme is community-led, it's shaped by what residents say that they need and what's important to them, and it's really bringing in those themes around how do we weave resilience conversations into everyday life, how do we bring it into local planning, how do we make that engagement creative, and that's happening through spaces like what if, and again Pauline will cover that, so I'll leave you wanting more on what that exactly is, but it's a space that helps residents explore future risks, and talk about what is possible in that area in a way that feels real and relevant to them. And a core part of that project is that partnership working, which is incredibly strong in that area. So throughout all our community resilience projects, we are looking at what are the insights that they're giving us. They're all very different and tackling kind of different issues in different pockets of our city, but they're helping guide the next steps around resilience and community resilience in Manchester. This is the final slide for me. I just wanted to sort of say, of all those experiences, what we're doing is pulling together a community resilience framework for Greater Manchester. And what that will do will be a shared approach which reflects what matters to communities and builds on local strength, but also drawing from all those learning from our pockets of projects that we're doing across GM. I suppose a reflection from me is that, again, co-designing community resilience is intensive, and it really requires that deep understanding of each community's unique needs. And sometimes that means, as I said in the beginning, that some of our approaches are really tailored and not always easy to scale and not easy to replicate elsewhere. But we're hoping that our community resilience framework will set out some guiding principles. So what is it that we're trying to achieve through all these projects, even if they are tailored to a particular community, as I feel that they need to be. Part of that work will also tackle the challenge of sustainable funding. It is really difficult. Sometimes projects are driven just based on the funding that is available. So we need to look at what partnerships we can bring in, what interest can we have in community resilience to make sure that these are supported on an ongoing basis, not project-based funded. So we're definitely on a journey. It's challenging at times, but really interesting to see what's coming out of those projects and conversations that we're having in the communities. And I think over the next year, we'll be working with the Resilient Cities Network to look at how we connect our local insights to that wider global learning and shape the framework that can grow, hopefully, with our communities. I'll stop there and hand over to Pauline.
Thanks, Sulafa. Yeah. So let's hand over to Pauline, and we'll bring in, as you mentioned, the delivery lens. We had the city region-wide view and community resilience. We'll bring it now down into one of the communities themselves and the delivery lens. So Pauline, from your vantage point, working deeply with the community in Edgeley, what has working closely with local government unlocked for residents and local partners, and who was an unexpected but critical partner to have in the room, and also any other reflections you may have, Pauline.
Hi everybody. Really feeling privileged to be here and speak to a global community, all striving towards the same future mission. I think I kind of the journey that I've been on as a kind of individual and as a consultant with a real passion about place has kind of, I started off the journey being invited to look at the area from a social infrastructure perspective and look at what the social assets in the area were and what the social gaps were and how we could look to improve the local area. And I think that, doing deep community engagement work on that gave me a real insight into the communities within the community. Being able to drop in regularly and kind of boots on the ground for a long time to understand the different challenges and opportunities that exist in place. The natural assets that existed, the buildings that were unused, the parks that were unloved, and the people that were, I guess, waiting for an opportunity to feel valued in their community again. The specific area that I'm working in is a place called Hollywood Park, and it has like a high-rise flats and social housing adjacent to that park. And I guess one of the early remits of my bit of work was to think about how we could activate the park again and how we could bring some capacity and bring some highlighting that asset and maybe what the future of that looks like in the context of a really big regeneration scheme that's underway in the area. And I think that bit's important because this little piece of work that I started off doing would not have happened if there wasn't a little bit of budget there to kind of get me on the ground in the first place and then connect the dots, which is something that I think drives a lot of this initial work. Is people, not bigging myself up, but necessarily, but there's always people that kind of see the connections between power and, that kind of disempowered kind of layers. And then, my job, I've merged my responsibility now through that kind of initial piece of work to start thinking about how they can be leveled out and leveled up. To create a more equitable and socially resilient place, and what that really takes. And what that really takes, in my view, is continued extensive community interaction and engagement. And to do that, from my experience as someone that's kind of worked on active travel projects, I've worked on environmental projects, I've worked on projects to do with child-friendly places, it really has come back to how people of, all colours, of all creeds, need to feel rested and need to feel joy in order to have the capacity to think beyond their everyday stressors. And if you don't have that sorted out, there's no way that you're going to be thinking about, how to save the world or how to, fix those resilient climate resilience issues, or, adapt to it and prepare for it, because you're preparing for your next meal, you're preparing for not being too hot in your flat or being too cold in your flat. So, for me, like finding an anchor location to pop up in, again, another example of kind of local underinvestment that's happened in this area for like 25 years, and now an opportunity with the developers that have come in to regenerate the area, an opportunity to say to them, why don't you use whatever social value you're intending to, and you legally have to kind of commit to from this work, do it, spend some of that in a different way, by investing in the place at the very start before there's even a spade in the ground. Let's invest in a programme of really long-term aspirations to create a resilience hub and let the community shape that with the kind of joy, fun, skill building, trust building that we desperately need. Because if a new community is going to come into this neighbourhood with 1,300 new homes being built, and the existing community that have been left behind don't have something to bridge between them, then there'll be more problems than there are solutions. So let's empower people now to create those resilient solutions, and then invite new people along to support them in that journey as well. And that's kind of why I'm there, to kind of bring partners together from, anyone who'll listen to kind of see this as an example of what can happen when you think about the possibilities of place and reimagine it with the people that are really embedded here and what they need to become resilient humans.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Pauline. And I'm sure there's going to be lots of questions. Keep dropping those questions in the chat. We're now going to travel across the world to Melaka in Malaysia, where partners are using community action plans to tackle flooding and the emerging challenges of urban heat. And they're working with residents, the city and universities to collaborate to generate street level evidence. Mazrina, could you walk us through the Resilience for Communities work you've been delivering to address flooding and heat waves?
Yeah, okay. Hi, everyone. Good evening. It's evening here in Malaysia. Mazrina, I am a town planner by profession, and from a private consultant, and I am also the president of Malaysian Institute of Planners here in Malaysia. So basically, community engagement here in Malaysia is not new. So we have gone through a lot of community engagement in terms of getting inputs and ideas in terms of a lot of things as far as spatial planning is concerned. But related to heat and flood specifically, in terms of climate resilient, making the community or the stakeholders understands their role, basically is not easy, because we, first of all, that's a technical issues, understanding of technical issues, and then understanding of the real on ground context, and different perspective on different stakeholders, on the community side, on the local authority sides, on the supplier sides, and on the government agency sides, other government agencies that involved within the urban structure or urban context itself. So different government organizations and whatnot. So next, Azrael, please. Sorry. So basically, we are part of the R4C program, which is a larger urban climate resilient program, which is active in 10 cities. So Malaysia, there's 2 cities here in Malaysia and we are in Melaka, and we are partnering with Resilient City Network. So next, basically this program goes over 3 phases. So we have been involved since 2023 from the pre-kickoff program up until now. We are embarking into phase 3 itself, where we are doing the design, the detailed design and implementation. It is a very interesting experience for me as well, because for planner, we very much involved in terms of designing part, but implementation and making sure that that particular projects or programs or even the initiatives being carried out on the ground, rarely we have that opportunity to do that. So this is, I think, is quite an experience, and I think it's quite an opportunity for urban scale to get involved in this kind of project. So basically, this program itself, we're looking at specifically issues on flood and heat. So though it is an increasing issues in the overall of Malaysia, I think in all of urban centers throughout the global, but in Malaysia, addressing it straight to the community, it's not that common yet. So we are normally will do policy guidance at the higher level. I am also involved with the national urbanization policy now, with the 3rd national urbanization policy in Malaysia. So these 2 issues has becoming a very apparent issues throughout the cities in Malaysia. We have 203 cities identified in the whole of Peninsular Malaysia. So these are among the main issues that has been identified. So next, so in September 2023, MB is actually the municipal council which these 2 particular sites are located, and our cities collaborated to select 2 communities for the implementation of the R4C program. So it is not really easy, because we have started with 180 communities throughout Melaka, these sites, and to identify the 2 selected communities are not easy. So there are various variety of criterias and fundamentals that we have to go through. But also when we do that, at the back of our mind, we're also thinking of, with these 2 community as a pilot, as a start, we could be able to also implement or emulate it throughout other communities in Melaka. So it may need to be hybrid here and there, but the basic fundamentals of the implementation or initiative would be able to also be emulated at other community groups in Melaka as well. So these 2 community groups, or 2 selected areas that has been selected in Melaka is Pantai Peringgit, we call it, and also Kampung Morton. Kampung is actually village. It's not really a village, but it's just a name there. It's a village in a city, so it's quite unique setup in Melaka. Next. So just a little bit of background. Melaka is located south to, if you want to see, central Kuala Lumpur is in between Selangor and Negeri Sembilan there. So it is actually to the south, and it is actually a historic coastal state in southern Malaysia, located along the Straits of Malacca, and also recognized as UNESCO World Heritage Site. So the site itself is actually under the UNESCO Heritage Site. And it is basically quite vibrant in terms of tourism, and the overall population of Melaka itself is actually 1 million. But under Melaka, as I shown just now, there are 3 municipalities. Isn't it? I think just go before the slide before, I think. There are 3 municipal councils involved here, and the sites is between the mid Melaka Tengah. It says there Melaka Tengah, that is under city of Melaka. So this is actually the site that within the whole state of Melaka. Next. So community of Kampung Morton and Pantai Peringgit. So Pantai Peringgit is then divided into two sites, which is Rumah Pangsa and also Rumah Awam. Rumah is actually residential, but is this a name? So this is Rumah Pangsa Pantai Peringgit and Rumah Awam Pantai Peringgit. So basically under these two areas, these are the demographic profiling. Population is about one side, Rumah Pangsa is actually about 2,000 population and another side is about 1,000 population. In terms of household size, it's about 4 people per household. It's quite dense basically. And basically these two areas, they're the demographic in terms of age structure is quite aging here who live in the particular area. So in the another side, which is Kampung Morton, the population is slightly low, 600 population. And then the household size is higher. It's 6 people per household. So basically this is a village in a city. So it is an old area, but the area is being kept very nicely and clean and whatnot. So both are located along River of Melaka. If you see the icon there, Rumah Peringgit, Rumah Awam and also Rumah Pangsa, the issue here, both there's flood and also there's heat. So you see the icon there. But in Kampung Morton, both issues are actually exist in Kampung Morton. So this is where we would like to have a look at in terms of the different group of people having understanding and also reactions towards the issue itself. Next. So through the community engagement, what we have gathered is that there are a lot of information and also data that we are unable to get through a secondary data. If we go through through secondary data or even through, if example, heat data through satellite data image, we would only be able to capture surface heat. So but with community engagement, we would be able to, monitor and also get data within inside and external residential houses. So the data are more accurate and the issues that they faced are more real and are more, sometimes we feel that is a small issue, but it is actually the real issues that that they are facing at the moment. So for example, we are saying here, official record may not highlight residents report flood. We thought that the flood is a main issue or is a severe condition, but to them, the flooding condition are not severe, but it's more of it's being occurring quite frequent because of heavy rainfall and things like that. So to them, to manage the situation is not it's not an issue anymore because they have been facing it. But the frustration is a disruption in terms of the daily activities because they depend in terms of their informal activities in terms of selling and whatnot of the food and whatever along the street and whatever not. So these are the things, the information, that small information that we are unable to get if we do not go and engage with the stakeholders of the area. So these are the things that we understand, and the simple solutions that they would want, which probably not being considered as a priority solutions that we would want to consider. So example, that early warning system, it's very simple, it's very quick win, it's very cheap, but we as a sometimes as an authority, we would say that could be, the third layer or fourth layer kind of solution that we want to consider. What we want to think about, the engineering solution, the technical solution, the higher level kind of solution. But to them, that's not their priority. So their priority is more on how they could able to recoup back and how they could be alerted earlier so that they could manage their situation faster, things like that. So these are the small information that we could only gather through a direct community engagement with the people in that particular area. So next. And as far as the heat is concerned, micro level community data is very crucial. So this is where we could be able to get their buy-in, that they could put in the device in the house and could put the device outside the house, and we request them to assist us to monitor in terms of the temperature, indoor temperature and outdoor temperature. So this is where we work with them, making sure that, you know, the privacy part is important, to making sure that there is a buy-in. It's not really easy to get them to have this buy-in, because at the end of the day, we need to make sure that the data or the information are being captured continuously. So until now, the data is still being captured, and they are willing to give that cooperation. So with that, we could even pick up the data in terms of the critical data, morning temperature, even indoor is higher than the outdoor, and even that data itself in the morning is not that pleasant. So in terms of comfort level, it is starting to get more and more warmer in the morning. What more in the at noon time. So next. So this is where they then tell us what do they want, what do they need, and things like that. So even we can see here, temperature starts at 28 degrees Celsius in early morning, even at 6 a.m. here. And we can see that, and it rises to an average of 32 degrees Celsius during the day and peak at 39 degrees. So this is quite warm, basically, very, very warm. And this is like throughout the year in Malaysia. We do not have 4 seasons. So this is like throughout the year. So these are the things that we need to understand, but we need to also get the data, not just the temperature, the heat, but the humidity. The humidity issue is also an issue there. So it is reaching out to the uncomfort level to this particular community within both area, Pantai Peringit, Pantai Peringit, and also Kampung Morton. So these are the, though we know that it's warm, but to what extent it's warm, you know, they can say it's not, the comfort level is no longer there, but it's a perception kind of issue, and different people having a different kind of resistance towards heat, you know, and humidity. So with the data, we would be able to have this evidence base. So this could actually support further when we would like to actually go towards, you know, proposing budgets and whatnots towards other different organizations. Next. Collaborative approach. We work with different types of communities, with kids from schools, with different agencies that involved like irrigation department, you know, MET, the one that monitor the weather, and also most importantly to the community at that particular area. Next. And we have conducted 15 focus group discussion with the same community over and over, with different stages, asking issues, solutions, and whatnot, through different kind of methodology. We do artist impression, we do a lot of other activities, so that to get their buy-in, to get their familiarity, and to get their comfort level with us, and also with the local authorities as well. We also do 31 interview with syndication directly with different groups, and also different special groups, and also government agencies. And also we also did a household survey to get to know the demographic profiling more detail. And through the engagement, we have developed 2 CAP, Community Action Plan, for Kampung Morton itself, and also Pantai Peringit Melaka. And in totality, there are total interventions of 16 and 14 for 2 different CAP. And under these interventions, we listed it out as a catalyst project, priority project, and support project. So these 2 CAP, I think, is already made available, and these are some of the easy kind of solutions that requested by the local authority, by the community, and also by the other groups of stakeholders. So we have identified in under here, and now we are going into phase 3, where we are doing some of the selected implementation programs for both community action plan. So I think that's all from me. So I am open for any kind of dialogue and also question. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mazrina. So just to close this section off, I'd like to hear the city leadership view and bring in Zuhaila, who's the Chief Resilience Officer for Melaka. So first of all, congratulations on the launch of the Community Action Plan. It's a really great plan, really great document. So well done on that. Could you share more about the process of developing it, in particular, for the heat-related initiatives, which is the work that you've done is really, really interesting. And how is that partnership with NTU alongside community members, so you've got academia and the community and other partners, shaped the heat adaptation strategies included in the Community Action Plan? We can't hear you, Zuhaila.
Okay, sorry. Hello, hi. Good evening to all Network City. I'm Zuhaila from Melaka Historic City Council. Okay, the Community Action Plan, or we call it CAP, is a key local strategy developed under the Urban Climate Resilience Program, UCRP, to help communities in Melaka adapt to the growing risk of urban flooding and heat stress. So the plan outlines a clear vision and a set of action that are both practical and long-term, tailored to Melaka local context. So the CAP was developed through a combination of technical assessment and extensive community engagement. So we work closely with residents, local stakeholders, and planners through survey, interviews, and workshop to understand their day-to-day challenge, especially related to heat. This process help bridge the gap between the community and the local authority, building trust and enabling share ownership of the solution. So more than just gathering input, our approach was about empowering resilient with the knowledge and tools to act on climate risk within their own homes and neighborhoods. To strengthen this community-driven approach, we also adopted a data-driven method to ensure that our intervention are grounded in both experience and evidence. So this include collaboration with Nanyang Technological University, NTU, where we deploy a local temperature sensor in selected homes, specifically those without air conditioning, to capture real-time temperature data, both indoor and also outdoors. So this initiative was carried out with voluntary from the resident and gave us granular insight into actual heat exposure condition at the household level. So the data collected revealed that indoor heat exposure was often more severe than outdoor condition. So particularly for vulnerable household. This highlight the needs to shift focus from just outdoor intervention like tree planting and park expansion to also include household level situation. As a result, the CAP try to introduce targeted interventions such as heat reflective coating, improve ventilation and awareness campaign to help residents adapt more effectively to rising indoor temperature. So initially, much of our planning focused on NBS, nature-based solutions, like biofuels, greens corridor, and urban greening to reduce heat and manage stormwater. But through deeper engagement and the support of the sensor data, we realize the importance of also addressing the indoor environment, especially in low-cost communities where people are most exposed to heat. So through the resilient for communities, or we call it R4C initiative, the CAP now reflect a holistic and inclusive approach. So one that combines urban planning with household resilience, empower community, and build a more sustainable and livable Melaka for the future. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Zuhaila, and we'll get the full panel up on screen. Right, so let's open the floor. And I've noticed a few questions that have been already dropped into the chat. If you can direct your questions to a panelist, that will help. But just to touch on a couple of questions that have already been raised, I'm going to pick the first question, actually, and this is to colleagues in Melaka. It's from Peter Robbins. And he's asked a question about the floating economy. And I thought I best ask this of Melaka, as Greater Manchester is not near the coast. So as coastal cities across the globe seek to build out onto the water in response to rising land costs and congestion, thinking about rising water levels and increased demand for offshore infrastructure, is this a solution or an idea that's being considered? And I suppose to keep it rooted into the conversation on community resilience, what would that mean for communities that would either be living or working on any of these different types of infrastructure?
Sorry, what was the question again about the rising in the water level along Melaka?
Yeah, so the question is around coastal cities and certain cities seeking to build out onto the water in response to rising sea level. Sea level rise, and is this something which is being considered in Malaysia? I suppose, Mazrina, and also then what would the implications be for community resilience?
Well, basically, when we do not really promote land reclamation in Malaysia in totality. That's the first fundamentals. But however, if it's needed to be carried out, it is also need to go through a very a lengthy process. We have a different layer of meetings and also approvals that needs to go through, and we have a different additional documents that needs to be also prepared in order to make sure that that particular development is justified. Among the documents are the environmental impact assessment, social impact assessment, if related to Melaka, heritage impact assessment, because it's a heritage UNESCO area. So basically, though extending towards over the water is not a priority. But however, though I understand that in Melaka, because we are quite pressing in terms of the development area, we are now promoting into a more concentrated development kind of concept. So whenever there are area that can go in terms of vertical development on a bit more higher intensity, we will go promoting on that particular kind of concept rather than going develop over the coastal area. But in Melaka, the issue of flooding, it's more on along the Sungai Melaka itself, the river of Melaka within internally, not basically from the seafront itself. Yeah.
No, brilliant. Thanks, Mazrina. And whilst we've got you, from your engagement, there's another question that's come in, and it's from your engagements with communities, have you encountered community fatigue when it comes to development initiatives? You know, are communities getting tired of being asked lots of questions before they see any change actually happen?
Yeah. That is quite common, because every time we go and engage with them, they say, oh, this kind of question has been asked before. You said that you wanted to do this, but da. So this is why we are being very careful about it. So we have also screened the kind of question that we want to ask and the kind of issue. So we changed a bit of a methodology. We said that, or through the engagement before, you have mentioned that these are the issues. So from this, is there any other issues that you think that we have not touched? And then from here, that these are the solutions that we may want to do. But that is why this program, I think it's quite promising to the community, because it comes with a specific implementation program attached to it. So community are more convinced that these are real, because they know that this is coming, and we keep on asking them and engage with them in terms of, for example, in terms of the cooling painting the wall at the community area or at the residential area. We go and ask them, a lot of questions in terms of the color, in terms of the design, in terms of whatever not. So they have that input in terms of the things that need to be carried out. And we were saying that, this will be done in the next few months. So this is quite different, because the engagement, the design, the implementation is being done in a small scale, but continuously. So I hope I hope they're gonna start to to buy into a lot more other initiatives. Yeah.
Brilliant, thanks, Mazrina. And I think some of those reflections, mostly, are reflected everywhere across the world when you're working with communities, and people want to see things happen, don't they? Enough talking. Let's do something.
Exactly.
So I'm going to move over to a question for colleagues in Greater Manchester, and we've just got a moment left, so it need to be a quick response. But there's been a question about the educational sector and how education, schools, colleges, etc., can play a large role. Primary schools, secondary schools, universities, and the fact that parents want the best for their children. Pauline, you've been doing lots of stuff around play and working with children, so a very kind of quick response to that question would be wonderful, to end us all on a hopeful, positive note.
Hopeful post-it note, okay. Yeah, it all starts at the school gates, whether we're talking about resilient ways to travel, sustainable ways to live, preparing the next generation for what will be. And I think that if we can do that in a way that makes sure they are hopeful and that their solutions are at the forefront of the changes that need to be made to make their world better for them, like it should be in all of our minds. And that's maybe just the end reflection for it. I can't really go into the depth of the how.
No, brilliant, thank you. Yeah, and we'll end on that. Keeping children and young people at the front of our minds when we're thinking about preparing the world for a rapidly changing future. and it's our children and our grandchildren who are going to inherit the world that we currently reside in. So let's wrap up. A huge thank you to our speakers, so Sulafa, Pauline, Mazrina and Zuhaila, for showing how city leadership, community activation and quite often simple local evidence can turn climate plans into neighbourhood projects that improve daily life, especially for those populations that are facing those vulnerabilities. The recording and materials will be on our website shortly. Please join us for the follow-on session, which is going to be spotlighting the Resilience for Communities programme in North America. That's going to be on the 16th of October. Bring a colleague along who should be in the conversation. Bring two. And on behalf of the Resilient Cities Network, and with huge thanks to the ZSERC Foundation, and most importantly to all of you for the thoughtful questions. Thank you for being here, and have a great day or evening wherever you are. Thank you all very much.
Thanks, bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye bye. Take care.